Welcome to our Research That Matters conversation on literacy and intellectual disability. I'm Dustin Wunderlich, Communications Director for the University of Washington College of Education, and joining me are Professor Roxanne Hudson, Research Assistant Ali Wilhelm, and Down Syndrome Community of Puget Sound Vice President Alison Burchett. We'll be discussing their involvement in the Reading Development Project. Through this project, UW College of Education researchers are partnering with families and school districts in Washington State to better understand the ways students with intellectual disability learn to read. This project is featured in the latest edition of the College of Education's Research That Matters magazine, which you can read online at education.uw.edu/RTM. Thank you, Roxanne, Ali, and Allison for joining today's conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
So, Roxanne, you're in the early stages of a project to understand the ways in which students with intellectual disability learn to read. Can you start by giving us a brief outline about your project?
Sure. This project is funded by the Institute for Education Science and the Department of Education, and it is designed to better understand how kids with a wide range of developmental intellectual disabilities learn to read, and especially in foundational skills like concepts about print, letter names, letter sounds. I have two co-investigators, Carly Roberts and Liz Sanders at the University of Washington. And together we are seeking to understand development over time. So we are starting with children in first, second, and third grade, and then following them over 3 years so that we get data on children themselves for 3 years, but we also have data from first grade to fifth grade. And we also are spending time with families and teachers to better understand how they think about literacy, how they structure that in their home, and how they provide instruction, and really get a deeper view of the kind of reading and writing that children with ID do in their home and in school. The reason that we're doing this project is that we want to better understand the kinds of growth that one can expect from this group of kids. That knowledge is known very, very well for typically developing children, children with dyslexia, children with learning disabilities, but this particular group of children hasn't really been studied this way, and so we're hoping to get a better sense of how they grow over time so teachers can use that information to guide their intervention.
Now, I think some people may be surprised that we don't know much about how kids with intellectual disability learn to read. Why is there such a big gap in our understanding right now?
Well, I'll jump in and then you two could add your perspectives because I know you have them. Historically, people have not expected very much from this group of children. They haven't expected them to learn to read. And there's been a group of people who really thought of reading as an academic kind of thing and not as a functional kind of thing. And I think that's changing now, that we realize that reading and writing is how people interact with the world, how they communicate with their family and their friends, and really starting to open that up to different groups of kids than we've previously thought of.
I think that focus on functionality was in the past viewed as this is the best way to spend our students' time. And I think more and more teachers, researchers, parents are realizing this isn't the best use of my student or my child's time while they're in school, and we need to have higher expectations for them, like Roxanne was saying. I think also with that became kind of the snowball problem of resources and funding, and if we don't have the research that shows what we can do, it's harder to get the funding, to get the resources in schools. So I think it's, obviously in all things in research and life, really, like there's a broad sphere of influence that are kind of shaping how we think about all of these things.
I love what you two have both said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. I think expectations have been a real challenge in the past. And in fact, before COVID hit, I was on a trip, I was in a hotel lobby, and a couple was observing my son, who has Down syndrome, interact with me and with another friend who was on the trip with us, who also has Down syndrome. And they were amazed. This couple was amazed, and they commented on the ability of our kids to speak well and to just to do the things that they were doing that they observed. And somehow it came up that I mentioned how well they read, and the couple was stunned. They said, I didn't know that they could read. I said, yes. I mean, pretty much if you have the expectation that someone can learn something, you know, they're on their own trajectory, but they have an amazing capability and potential for learning.
Now, Alison, oh, go ahead.
Another reason I think is this is a very small group of kids. It's 1% of the school age population. And so finding enough children to do the kind of research that we're doing is challenging. And the federal government hasn't really put a lot of money behind that because it is so challenging. And the kinds of research that have been done have been focused on small numbers of kids at a time. So one of the things that I think is really innovative about this project is that we're doing a large group and recruiting the heck out of kids and families to help us do that. But it's something that is really challenging to pull off.
Now, Alison, as you mentioned, you have a child with an intellectual disability, and you're a community leader in this area. Could you share some of your experience seeing the challenges of intellectual disability and learning to read?
Sure. I could, again, just reiterate that expectations are a huge challenge. I think that is one of the things that we have to overcome as just a broader community, as a world community, having expectations of people that actually meet their abilities rather than stifle them. So that's, you know, that's a big hurdle. It really is still. As a leader of the Down syndrome community of Puget Sound, we're always looking for opportunities to enhance our children's learning possibilities. So engaging in this research was super exciting, and we in fact featured it in our newsletter because we wanted to, as Roxanne said, we wanted to bolster their research with numbers, you know, have as many kids participate as possible. I'm very fortunate that my son's team of educators, his special education teacher, his general education teacher, the therapists and assistants that work with him are all really open to his ability to learn and grow. And that makes a world of difference. Not everyone has that. Unfortunately, there are system-wide problems with our education, especially here in Washington. It's ironic because we have one of the leading entities for inclusive education right in our backyard, the Herring Center, and it's a worldwide role model really, and yet our own school districts that surround it really box our kids in and don't allow them to learn the way they could. So being able to participate and promote the ability and understanding of teachers and educators and those right here in our community to know how to help our kids learn and how to really allow them to reach their potential is huge. It's an incredibly important work and something I'm grateful that people are taking on, that you people are taking on, and I'm grateful to be a part of, really.
I think with what Alison was saying too, some of that low expectations has unfortunately seeped into some of the culture of educators. And I, you know, in my heart, I want to believe it's not because they don't think those things are possible for our kids. I think they're just uneducated about what is like the best practice to teach these skills. How do you get a student that maybe has more complex needs than what you're used to learn to read, to learn to write, to independently understand a story. And I think that that's also why it's so important to do this type of research, because these are the things that will become guideposts for future educators. Just Allison, I came here from another state recently, and we had the same problems there too. And it is great to have a teacher that is supportive of your student and sets a really rigorous goals for them in their education. But how can we make sure that all educators understand and know what has to happen to help students be their most successful?
Right. And Dustin, I would love to just add that as an organization, the Down Syndrome Community of Puget Sound, we actually do run a program called the Learning Program, which is specifically focused on literacy as well as numeracy and memory retention skills. So it's a really, it's an important, literacy is such a vital gift to any individual. It's what opens the world to them. In more ways than we can even think of, for future, career opportunities, for just, general, general skills for survival in this world. And so, personally, I'm always looking for opportunities, but, as an organization, we're always trying to find and understand ways and, find evidence-based practices, best practices, to help our kids learn and grow and really be able to do just what Alison was just what Ali was describing as, be able to understand and comprehend the world around them. And literacy is just a key for that.
And Ali, before coming to the University of Washington and joining this project's research team, you were a special education teacher for several years. Could you talk a little bit about how that experience impacted your desire to study this issue?
Sure. So I worked in Nashville, Tennessee. I taught elementary age special education. And I think, most elementary school teachers, I would say a descriptive quality is their love of reading. I mean, I think it's hard to find an elementary school teacher who doesn't, love books and love stories and love watching students blossom as they learn the skills to read independently. And, that was what I loved doing too. I mean, I've always loved books and literature, and I loved sharing that joy with my students. So although I also love teaching math, but writing and reading were the things that I really enjoyed teaching the most. So when I was looking at graduate programs, I wanted to find a program that would help me build my interests and my experience and help advance the field in literacy for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Another factor that kind of led me to this space was, as I was mentioning earlier, kind of the next generation of teachers, as I was mentoring graduate students at a different university. So they were doing their field, oh, hey, the puppy, I love it. They were doing their field placements in my classroom. So I had these wonderful, bright young women who were seeking their master's degrees coming in and spending, 5 days a week with me. And we would go to do some kind of a reading skill or a writing skill. And they kind of what, how do we do that? What's this gonna look like? How do we do this? And I kind of found that a little problematic. Again, these are all very bright, enthusiastic teachers, and there really shouldn't have been a reason that they didn't know how to approach this. And that was a big factor in making me think, all right, we got to change something here. Maybe it's time to go back and seek a different role in education that will help me enable all teachers to have this skill set, or at least know that the option is there. At least be I can attack this problem and not feel like they don't have any resources or skills. So yeah, that's really those are my goals. It's how I want to devote my life to education.
Great. Well, Roxanne and Ali, can you tell us a little bit more about how you'll be working with the teachers of children in your study?
Well, we hope to learn from them about how they think about reading and writing in their classroom, their goals, how they make decisions, their perspectives. Before COVID-19 came, we had planned on observing instruction in classrooms and learning directly from what teachers are doing. I'm not sure that's going to be possible anymore. So we're mostly going to interview teachers and learn from them. We also have been offering and will continue to work with teachers who ask for help in thinking about reading instruction for their students. And we have also been working with teachers who are in our study and not in our study by placing our pre-service teachers with them who are learning skills with me at the university and then applying them in the classrooms. And for some teachers, as Ali said, it's new information. And so we're able to broaden the perspectives of teachers that are out in the field. But for this particular project, we're primarily wanting to learn from them and help and understand how they think about instruction.
I think it's important for us to know as a research team what works and what doesn't work, and how can we pair that up to the students' progress data that we're collecting over this span of time. You know, I think when we conceptualize our research project, you know, we should note that students will have many teachers over that span, right? They're not going to be with one teacher from first grade through fifth grade. So I think it will give us a nice holistic picture of what's really happening in the classroom. How do we characterize instruction across the whole elementary age span for students with significant disabilities?
We also don't imagine that we have all the answers. In fact, we have very few of the answers. And so learning from parents and teachers will help us grow and learn ourselves and really understand what's happening out in the field.
And I understand one of the things that you're hoping to do through this project is to highlight some innovative ways that teachers and families are thinking about literacy and engaging in literacy practices. I know you're just in the very initial stages of the study right now, but are there any examples that have captured your attention, and maybe even before kicking off this particular project?
One thing that I know we're trying to avoid COVID-19, but let's be honest that it's unavoidable, unfortunately for all of us. And I think for me, like a great thing to witness was the shift and approach and just the willingness to like turn on a dime and reinvent your instruction. One teacher in a Seattle public school who's working with our study, she did an awesome job, like trying to meet the needs of her families, understanding where they were in this time, but also still provide meaningful instruction for her students. So, you know, she and I worked together through some other avenues at the university, and we brainstormed what's going to work, what's not going to work. We really thought about, if I'm providing virtual instruction, how can I make this video screen engaging? How can I make sure that students are learning despite them being miles away from me? And it was really inspiring to see teachers be willing to do that. So in terms of like innovative, you can say that the letters are always going to be the letters and the sounds are pretty much always going to be the sounds, but the approach and the attack to meeting those goals has had to change, which was good to see.
Alison, what kind of things do you do?
So I want to first say that pre-COVID, when the researchers were coming into the classroom to work with my son, I didn't witness any of those sessions, but it was very well received by the teachers. And I love hearing that one of the perspectives you have is to, you know, learn together really with the teachers and through them, because I think that is empowering, and that really does shift the way that people look at research as, you know, something that's not just instructional, but really more of a learning opportunity for everyone. And I would say that so screen time or being engaged in front of a screen in a learning setting is very challenging for my son. It's super challenging for my brilliant, you know, typical student, of a daughter who's you know, of any student who could succeed in an online learning environment, she still has challenges. And so for my son, really who really works best in, you know, a setting where it's very personal and very tangible, the online experience is challenging. But notwithstanding, we've had some very clever things. As Ali mentioned, people can get creative going online. So my son took the opportunity, since we couldn't visit grandparents in person, to read to them through online video conferencing. And then his special education teacher was dropping off materials at our doorstep so that he could have reading and comprehension materials simultaneously that I could work on with him, or else. And then he also engaged in more online reading sessions where my son could just read to him online, and he could kind of ask comprehension questions at the same time. So, you know, it was a lot more one-on-one. It was FaceTime with people that he really knew cared about him and that he was interested in impressing with his reading skills. So that's kind of what we've done. And now, well, I mean, he's tired of reading to me. So it's been really great to have him read to other people through that virtual, you know, those virtual opportunities.
I would say another thing, this is not related to COVID, but I've been pretty inspired by the motivation of families and teachers. Like even Alison being here today is a great example of that. Like, yes, she works in a community and has a role, but she's been like 100% behind this study since the start. And that's great. I love seeing families take initiative and be right there with us. Like, how can we help you out? What can we do? And that, I think, has been an awesome experience to see. But we want to spread that word and get this project out to more families so we can get everyone involved.
We want to do that too. We want to support you with that. We're always interested in understanding and learning more.
It seems like this this partnership between the research, between families, between educators is really important to moving the needle on this type of work. I'm not sure if Roxanne or Ali or Alison, if any of you have thoughts about just how crucial this sort of partnership of all of these different sides is to this work.
Well, we can't do it without the partnership. And so one of the things that is really clear is that without families willing to be gracious and generous with us and help us understand the reading of their children, there is no research. And the same with teachers. But also the whole purpose of the project came from our experiences in classrooms. I had a lot of teachers, pre-service and in-service, asking me, how do I know if what I'm doing is working? And I'd say, well, keep on going, because we know children learn a little bit slower. And I know that there was a study done in Texas where it took 3 years for children to really show what you would call substantial progress. And if those teachers had stopped during those 3 years, the kids would have never made the kinds of growth that they did. And right now we don't have the data to say, keep on going, you're on the right track. And so it's really, we're trying to meet a really big need in the schools and with families to help them really see, my kid's doing all right, or we need to change our instruction. But my big worry is that teachers are going to think it's not working and stop. That's my big concern. And so if we have some information that we can show them to keep on going, I think that kids will have a better outcome.
Dustin, you said the word partnership, and I think that was such a great word choice, because we want teachers to understand that that's truly where we're coming from, right? I think the aura of research can sometimes be a little scary, a little white lab coat, little clipboard with a pen, and you know, like, what notes are you taking? What did they say? Can I see them? Did I do a good job? Because teachers always want to do a good job. That's who we are. That's why we're in schools. But I think it's important that we really get the message out that, like, no, we want to support you. We're here to work with you. Like, let us be a resource. Let us be a resource for you. And then you can be a resource to teachers across the country, across the world. Like, nothing you do in that classroom is going to truly affect positively or negatively your role in that classroom. So let us be here and help you and work with you to support families, to support other students. Yeah, I just think that message is really important to restate here.
So I think, you know, I hadn't thought about this before Roxanne spoke a moment ago, but parents and caregivers inherently understand the rate of progress of a child that they live with and take care of day in, day out. And I think it doesn't always occur to us, well, actually it does in some ways, but every nuance doesn't occur to us of the knowledge gap that there is. And, you know, the fact that I see progress and I know that my child is on his own trajectory of progress at his own rate, pretty much I know everything is going to take longer. You know, walking took twice as long for my son with an intellectual disability as it took for my daughter. Although he read earlier because she was so social and didn't want to start reading. But he, and he was more interested when he was a toddler. But there, he's at his own rate of progress. And I think I didn't appreciate before Roxanne expressing it just now, how putting that knowledge in the hands of the educators, saying, I'm seeing the progress and I know that you may not see it in 1 year's time, but we may see it 3 years down the road, and you're building a base for that progress and that skill or that ability is really vital. And, you know, as Ali mentioned, these tools haven't been in the hands of our educators. And even, you know, the programs that, some of the other programs that we work with are putting the tools in the hands of parents because the educators don't have them, you know. And so I really appreciate being able to expand the reach of this research and really have it placed, these tools and skills placed in the hands of those who work with people with intellectual disabilities. You know, I just, and I think that something you asked earlier really triggered one example in my mind. You know, I'm a very engaged parent, like you said. You know, I have a community of support. I fortunately have teachers who are really on board with me and want my son to reach his potential. But there are students I see in the schools who don't have that level of support, and there are barriers. There are language barriers. There are barriers because their parents can't be engaging with teachers, whether because of that language barrier or because they simply can't get to the school physically. Their, you know, parents are all working. They just don't have the freedoms and abilities that I have to support my son personally and to work with that team and that partnership. So it's even more vital that anyone who's working with with these children or, you know, with these individuals have the tools and skills and can take the initiative themselves. You know, whether you have a caregiver or someone who really knows the child well, be able to step in. So I just think this is an incredibly exciting research project, and and want you to keep going even amidst COVID.
We do too. We do too.
We're trying.
Well, and Alison, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned the Herring Center for Inclusive Education here at the College of Education, and right now a lot of students with intellectual disability don't have a lot of access to educational environments that are truly inclusive. So I'm wondering, how do you hope this project might help to change that?
Well, just as been stated before, gaining a better understanding of who these individuals are, how they learn, what we can do to foster and nurture that learning environment. And, you know, as Ali mentioned, with ingenuity in our online delivery right now, or you know, even if it's just, you know, careful carefully and safeguarded in-person interactions, just really being able to understand and foster that learning environment for our kids in every way possible is really my hope for this. And I think that like you said, we have some good knowledge base. It's just not as specific as it's needed to be, and it's not in the hands of the people who work with the kids day in, day out. It's hard. People want to, like we've mentioned before, people want to do a great job. They want to see our kids succeed, but they don't always know how to help them do it. So that, my hope is that that's what happens.
Yeah, I think some of that specificity will be really instrumental in dispelling false beliefs too, right? Because you can stand on your soapbox and scream as loud as you can, like, no, things have to be different. Like, you need to try harder in different ways. And if you don't have any facts to back that up, that's really difficult, right? So I think gathering this information and documenting potential in a concrete way will be a source for parents, for educators who maybe want to have a more inclusive environment, but maybe have an administration or a school system that isn't supportive or doesn't have the resources to help them enact that in their building. So when we have this collection of facts, we're building a better story, right? So now we can be more persuasive because we can show you, and that helps a lot, I think, to make meaningful change in things like inclusion and instruction.
And those are the key elements of system-wide change, having the compelling stories, but also, the facts and the really evidence-based information to back it up. That's what decision makers need.
So now, as we come to a close here, I was hoping each of you might share a key takeaway or thought about the work that's going on right now. And maybe, Ali, we could start with you.
Sure. Just to state it really plainly, I think that this work is like invaluable to the future of many students in Washington and in America. Literacy changes lives. I think we've all said that already today in different ways. Let's help you reach your goals. I think in one of my classes, we were talking about something, and I think I was probably doing what I'm doing right now and just like talking off the cuff. And I like brought up this metaphor of like a track coach, right? If I am the track coach, I don't care if you run that mile in 6 minutes or 15 minutes. Like, maybe I would prefer you to be one side or the other, but my job isn't to judge how fast you run it. It's to help you run it more quickly, right? So we're here, we're going to take our data, we're going to support you, and we're going to help you run the best mile you can, regardless of what that is. And also, even bigger takeaway, get involved. Come on, we're here. Come see us. Follow us on Facebook, Reading Development Project. Check out our website. Visit all of the UW resources. Contact us in whatever way possible. We're here to help. We want you to get involved. Let us know what we can do to meet you in the middle.
Alison, do you have a closing thought or takeaway about this work?
Oh my gosh, it's just so exciting. It really is. It's needed. And, I'll state it again. Literacy opens the world to our kids. I think one of the huge moments in a parent's life is when they're driving down the street and they realize their child can read the signage that you're driving by, and you realize the world broadening for your child, and it can be in a scary way because you don't want them to read all the signs out there, but it can also be in an incredibly exciting way because you really learn to see your child as the individual that they are. They're no longer an extension of you. They're really their own person. And that's just a moment that is pivotal in a parent's life. And so literacy is key. It's crucial, it's important, and it opens doors. And we want a world of possibilities for anyone. We want them to understand that they can go and do and be anything they want to. And reading reading is that door opener. So anyway, I would just highly encourage anyone who can to support this research.
And Roxanne, what about you? What's a closing thought or takeaway that you would have?
Well, two of them. One, I believe strongly that education, the purpose of education is to open up choices for people, to give them opportunities that they can make their own decisions about what they want to do in the world. If they want to pursue post-secondary education, or they want to become a plumber, because by golly, we need more plumbers. If they want to become a farmer or go in the military, or whatever it is that they want to do, education to me is the tool for that. And so if you are a parent of a child in first, second, or third grade, talk to us. We would really love to talk with you, because we need more children in our project. We do have a Facebook page that Ali mentioned. My email is rhudson@uw.edu. We would love to talk with you.
Well, we will be sure to include those links in the description of this video. And if you'd like to learn more about the Reading Development Project or read other stories in the latest edition of Research That Matters magazine, please visit us online at education.uw.edu/RTM. And thank you, Roxanne, Ali, and Alison, for sharing your insights with us today.
Thanks for having us today.
Thank you for including us.
Thank you so much.